Welcome to Misfit HQ. I'm Drew, that's Caroline, and we are doing a deep dive on the Snatch today. So if you have to pause, go get your coffee, go get your notebook and pen, write all this stuff down, go for it. Weightlifters, we got a lot of really good information for you, but I'm gonna need you to go earmuffs for a second.
Can you earmuff it for me?
So I can let the CrossFitters know that we are talking about the squat snatch, although the power snatch would apply to a lot of this stuff as well. We like to teach the squat snatch from the top down because it gives us reference points that we can work on. And if you're at home and you're trying to coach yourself, what's really good about this is you can start to get a really good understanding of the position you're trying to get into. You can practice it. And then when you're filming yourself, you can sort of just go back and forth and make sure that if this thing went wrong, then that's probably why that happened. And we'll actually address a lot of the common faults within the movement today. So what Caroline's gonna do right now is she's gonna grab her snatch grip on the PVC pipe here, and she is going to get into what we call power position. Really, all we need to do is drive the knees out and make sure that the barbell doesn't get buried in the hip and that the shoulders drop. Now, what we're looking for in this position, if we start at the top, is we wanna make sure that the athlete has a neutral spine, and that starts at the shoulder and neck area. If you are to roll your shoulders forward and get into a bad position or overextend and really sort of poke your chest out, unfortunately, that is going to drive issues all the way down the spine. So we want to start with a nice neutral position, and you notice that she's going to be able to maintain that all the way down pretty naturally because of what she's doing with her shoulders here. So as we move down, we see that her arms are long in this position, as they say, when the elbows bend, the power ends. There are some athletes who benefit from that sort of bent arm early pull with the really long arms, but from a physics standpoint, we're really not looking for that with any athlete whatsoever. So now when we get to the hip, we see that that barbell is nice and close to the hip, and when we go down the leg, we are tracing out to the knee. If we are going to extend and then catch in a really good position, move the feet laterally, knees out in this position is so imperative. We really need to make sure that we are getting to this position here. As we go down, we should be able to come back into the foot from the knee. That's how we know that we have an open hip, a nice stable position, and we want that jumping position from the athlete with the feet set under their shoulders. If it's too wide there, it's just not as athletic of a position, and then lateral heel movement is going to be super challenging. So what we're gonna do now from a sort of like kind of a slow-mo standpoint, go up through extension and show that point at which the athlete should think about pulling under. So I basically just want you to go up through extension without pulling under. This is when we get tension within the barbell. And again, if when the elbows bend, the power ends, then we know that that's our cue to move our feet. So from this position, her heels are going to move laterally, and she's going to actively pull under the barbell. Good. And again, you see this bottom position here. You can tell that she was neutral there. She's staying neutral. Head is underneath the barbell. Knees are able to be outside of the feet. That's where we want that hip to be. Nice, stable position. You can go ahead and stand up. So again, when I am snatching, I'm thinking about being in this position with my knees out, tracing back to the foot so that I can still have the knees out when I jump out to that position. So many athletes think that if they turn their foot open, that that's foot movement. In a very literal sense, yes, your foot is moving. That's why we tell athletes to make sure that we get lateral heel movement. And if you're coaching yourself, this is as simple as my jumping position, chalk mark on the ground, my landing position, chalk mark on the ground. Now, we are going to transition down to the low hang position, talk about what that looks like and how to get from the low hang in that second pull to the hip in the third pull, which we've just addressed. What's happening in this position is we are maintaining tension in our posterior chain. We are allowing our torso to get out over the barbell so we can rely on both the whip up of the torso and then the extension from that leg drive that you just saw. So this position right here, I'm actually gonna have Caroline go a little bit lower and let the barbell out away from her kneecap just a little bit. What we see with athletes in this position, if they're really sort of beginner style dragging the barbell up their leg and then it's right on their knee, that transition to power position can be really challenging. Now, this is a double-edged sword. If she lets that barbell get too far out in front, that's going to be really challenging position. So again, we'll go back down to that low hang position here. We know, again, that the athlete needs to be able to rely on that torso flying open and then jumping. So if the torso is going to fly open and then you're going to jump, we need to regain that knee bend. One of the hallmarks of making sure that happen, and what she's doing right now, is driving that knee out from this position. If you drive your knees out, you're really tight, especially if you have like a 45-pound barbell in your hand, you're going to get the shakes. This should be a very uncomfortable position for you. And again, as she is sweeping up, because she has some space off of her leg, she can get her knees back out in front, get her hips to the bar while having that leg bend there. So let's show it all together. Out over the barbell, nice slow transition. Hip is brought to the bar, extend in that position, and we're coming back up. Really important talking about that transition, and as you're practicing it, it does not need to be the fastest thing in the world. What it needs to be is either in your mind, my knees get back in front of the bar because there's tension, or I need to bring my hip towards the bar. What we cannot have happen is go back down, don't regain that knee bend, come up to the hip here. We don't have many choices here, okay? This is where we get what we call the hump and dump athletes. She has to throw the barbell out away from herself. She can't actively pull down, and then we rock it underneath. And we see, the barbell crashing on you doesn't happen as much within the snatch from a visual standpoint, but it is happening to a lot of athletes. Obviously, they're gonna have to jump forward in that position. So you as the athlete have to find out what makes the most sense for your cue. Is it truly driving the knees back out in front? A lot of athletes don't need to do that because if you have a good low hang, there's so much tension that they get there anyway. Do you need to think about bringing your hips through and getting them to the bar? Whatever it is, we are going to end up in that position there. You can go ahead and rest for just 1 second. I want to talk for 1 second about the nuance between an athlete who relies more on leverage versus someone who relies more on power position. So let's say you're a little bit taller and you rely a ton on getting out over the barbell and that whip in that position right there. There's a chance that your power position might be a touch more out over the bar, and then you sort of pass through that more perfect power position as you're going up. If you're not a leverage lifter, that power position becomes so much more important. So you see a lot of athletes that really drive their knees way out and get into this position. This is fine here, not as out over the bar as Caroline was, but then this becomes so much more important because you don't get that speed from the torso flying open that you normally would. Now, with all that being said, the best lifters in the world rely on both. Their torso flies open, but because they get to this position here and they still have knee bend, the torso flies open and then they're able to jump in that position. If we can use both of those things, that is going to be the way that we snatch the most weight. Last but not least, we're going to talk about that starting position. I like to have athletes find their starting position, again, from the top because we know what tension feels like. If you get down into the bottom and you're not in a tense position, you're not in a smart position, you're not really going to know because nothing has happened yet. So one of the drills you can do is put a little bit of weight on the bar while you're warming up. Do a top-down start where you're going through the positions we're just going to go through here, and let the barbell hover over the ground just a little bit. And ask yourself, is this my starting position? If the answer is no, probably make it your starting position. Or is this a bad position like the way that I start and I need to fix it and make sure that I have that leg drive? So we're gonna go ahead and soften the knees just a little bit from this position here. Just gonna shoot her hips back, torso out over the bar. So again, we have that tension in the low hang that we had before. As she drops down, butt goes down, knees go out. This position right here, go ahead and stay in that position, but put the PVC pipe on your back, like you're gonna back squat, okay? This is a squatting movement. We need leg drive in that first pull. If you get into more of a deadlift setup, you're not gonna get that same leg drive. There's a reason why we do so much damn back squatting. It's because we need leg drive, strong lower body, in so many different movements. So from this position right here, I'm actually going to make one quick correction. I would like to see those feet a little bit closer together. So get into that position that you were in power position there. Good. This happens to a lot of athletes. We get a lot of athletes who set up, in that stance, and then they grab the bar, and we see the shimmy, and then we might get a sumo, we might get a sumo pull from that position, which we're not looking for. So we want to make sure it's a jumping position, somewhere we can really drive through our legs from. So again, from this position, we know that we've already sort of gone through where we're headed, and it's just about how do we get there. So when you're in that front position here, you're in that, that getting ready for that first pull, we know that the knees need to go back. And from an anatomical standpoint, that means that we need the weight in the front half of the foot to get knee extension, to get that knee out of the way. If she was to go on her heels and sort of drag up her leg, it's very uncomfortable getting your knees out of the way. So again, we're thinking leg drive in that first pull. We are driving the knees out and getting to that position. Barbell's a little bit off there. Now we can see the speed wobble that I was talking about. We really want that tension in that position. And then again, just to recap, knees in front, hips to the bar. And then from a timing standpoint, she knows she's done so many of these that she's sort of just waiting for that torso to open. That's when she knows she can really, really get into it. So again, we're going to go back through sort of the whole lift to make sure that everything is coming together. She's going to go down to that starting position. Weight is in the front half of her foot, but the entire foot is down. We get really good leg drive instead of thinking about pulling and driving the butt up. When she's in this position here, she's out over the barbell. Barbell's away from the knee a little bit. Weight should be about in the arch, but again, whole foot is down. As an athlete, unless you're being super dynamic in the moment, we need that entire foot on the ground. As she sweeps back to power position, knees are in front, hip is to the bar. She has that timing, and then she's pulling there. Now, the one thing that we didn't talk about that is super important, but I left for the end on purpose, is this idea of actively pulling underneath the barbell. If you get to the hip and understand that extension sort of creates that moment where anywhere from 4 to 6 inches the barbell is going to move and have that weightless moment, if we don't continue to overpull and get through that exaggerated triple extension, we move the feet, we naturally will rip underneath the barbell. And once you feel that, that's when you can teach yourself to be more active with it. That's when you can teach yourself to be the athlete where you see them in your affiliate class or at a competition and you're just like, what the hell just happened? How did they do that? It's because they're not overpulling in terms of hitting that triple extension. They're getting that moment where the barbell gets floaty, and then they're ripping underneath as their feet move. But again, all of those other things need to take place first before you're able to really work on that. Now, if you go to misfitathletics.com, you're gonna notice that we're gonna work on all this different stuff throughout the year. We're gonna have skill work, where we hit these exact positions. We're gonna go heavy. It is our goal and our job to give you these really, really detailed reference points. Again, so you can set that camera, whether you have a coach or not, you can set that camera off to the side, film what you're doing, make sure you get into slow-mo and really get into the finer details. And the more you really narrow in on the finer points of these movements, the more you're gonna be able to get really comfortable with them and finally hit that true 1 rep max. If you like what you're seeing, make sure you hit that like button, share, subscribe, go to the grocery store, fly off to the moon. I didn't think of my outro. If you liked the video or if you have an idea for a new one, please let us know in the comments section, and we'll see you in the next one.